All right, let's talk about goals. We live in a world that is just completely obsessed with them, right? The bigger, the more ambitious, the better. But what if that constant push, that striving, is actually what's holding us back? Today, we're going to dig into a totally different way of thinking, thanks to some incredible insights from neuroscientist Anne-Laure Le Cunff on how to ditch the pressure and start living a more experimental and, honestly, a more free life.
I mean, you know this feeling, right? It's like we're constantly looking at this giant social media leaderboard of life, always asking ourselves, am I doing enough? Is my goal big enough? And it just creates this wave of anxiety, this feeling that you're always falling behind. Your huge, inspiring goals start to feel less inspiring and more just heavy, overwhelming.
LeCurn has a great name for this. She calls it the maximized brain. This is that little voice in your head that takes a simple idea like, hey, I should probably exercise more, and turns it into, okay, I'm committing to the gym 7 days a week, no excuses. Or, I'd like to write becomes, I have to write a novel this year. The problem is, this all-or-nothing mindset usually leads us straight to burnout. Or we just give up before we even start because it's just too much.
So why on earth do we do this to ourselves? Well, a lot of the time we're just running on autopilot. We're being driven by these subconscious mindsets, these invisible scripts that are running our lives without us even knowing it. And if we want to break free, we have to first get a good look at what they are.
Okay, so this grid right here maps out these 4 mindsets, and it really all boils down to just 2 things. Your level of ambition, that's the horizontal axis, and your level of curiosity, the vertical axis. Where you land on this grid can tell you a whole lot about the invisible script you might be following day to day. So let's start in the bottom left corner. This is the cynical mindset. Think of it as pure survival mode. You've kind of lost your ambition and your curiosity is gone too. This is where you might find yourself doom scrolling for hours, just feeling like, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. Now, the escapist is a little different. You've still got that curiosity, which is great, but your ambition is low. So what happens? You escape. Instead of taking action in your own life, you channel that curiosity into binge watching an entire series, or maybe some retail therapy, or you spend weeks planning a dream trip you know you're never actually going to book. And then we have the perfectionist. This is where ambition is super high, but curiosity is low. This is the home of toxic productivity. You're laser focused on one specific goal, and you believe with everything you have that if you can just achieve that one thing, then you'll finally be happy. You're basically trying to escape the messiness and uncertainty of life by just trying to outwork. But here's the good news. There is a powerful alternative to all these limiting mindsets. It's that 4th quadrant, the one where both curiosity and ambition are high. This is the experimental mindset, and it is a complete game changer. It's a whole new way to move forward. And this comparison just lays out the shift so perfectly. You're moving away from this rigid, straight line that's only focused on the final destination. Instead, you start focusing on the journey, on the process itself. You stop trying to climb some ladder someone else built, and you start designing your own little cycles of growth. You're letting go of that desperate need for certainty, and you're just leaning into curiosity. You know, when you really adopt this mindset, your whole perspective changes. Suddenly, uncertainty isn't scary. It's an opportunity. Failure isn't the end of the world. It's just a piece of data you can learn from. Your focus shifts from just winning to learning and discovering. It totally reimagines your relationship with goals, taking all that pressure off. Okay, so this all sounds amazing in theory, right? But how do you actually do it? How do we put this into practice? Let's get into the how-to and look at how we can start designing what Le Cunff calls tiny experiments for our own lives. The heart of this approach is actually beautifully simple. It's basically the scientific method, but for you. First, you just observe. You notice what's going on and how you feel. Then you ask a question, a little hypothesis about what might make things better. Then you run a small, low-stakes experiment to gather some data. And finally, you look at the results and decide what to do next. It's just a simple cycle of learning and growing. And the engine that drives these experiments is a really cool tool called a pact. Now, this is not some lifelong vow you can never break. Think of it as a temporary commitment device. All you're doing is committing to one specific action for a limited time. The only goal here is to collect data about how it works for you. So, to make sure your pact is actually useful, it needs to follow this acronym. First, it has to be purposeful, something you're genuinely curious about. It has to be actionable, something you can start like right now. It needs to be continuous. You do it regularly for a specific amount of time, say 2 weeks. And finally, it has to be trackable. And I mean simple, a yes or a no. Did I do it today? That's it. No complicated charts needed. And this quote from her just nails it. We often try to force ourselves into a new habit, like, I'm going to start running 3 times a week because we think we should. We're told it's good for us. But with an experiment, you're admitting you're not quite sure. You're saying, I wonder what would happen if I tried running 3 times a week for the next 3 weeks. You're just testing it. All the pressure just melts away. So you've run your little experiment. You've collected your yes/no data for a couple of weeks. Now what? Well, this brings us to maybe the most important step of all, looking at your results and making a conscious, informed choice. Le Cunff shares this amazing personal story. She ran an experiment to see if she wanted to be a YouTuber. And check this out. The external signals, the outside data, were amazing. The channel was growing, people were leaving positive comments, she was getting requests to collaborate. Success, right? But her internal signals were telling a completely different story. She dreaded filming. She had high anxiety about it. She was procrastinating. She just hated talking to a camera. So what did she do? She stopped the channel. She walked away. Because even though it looked like a huge success to the outside world, she listened to her internal data. And the big lesson there is that no amount of external success is worth being miserable on the inside. And that's really the heart of this whole thing. Living an intentional life isn't about ignoring what the world tells you, and it's not about only following your feelings either. It's about bringing both together. True freedom, true agency, comes from looking at the whole picture, the external data and your internal experience, and then making a choice that honors both. So that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. The word should is usually a trap. It's a sign we're following a script that isn't ours. But what happens when you replace that word with might? You open up a world of possibility, of curiosity, of experimentation. So I'll leave you with this. Take a look at your life right now. What's just one should that you can turn into a might? Maybe even today.